Hi everyone, Pam Gregory, astrologer. I'm going to be speaking to you today about the second half of February and the full moon that we have coming up in Virgo on the 27th. Now, the energies throughout February are going to continue to be intense. They're going to be quite high-pitched, could be very volatile and chaotic at times. Lots of shocks and surprises along the way. And in general, just know that the whole of this year is going to be a year of revelation and disclosure. Revelation and disclosure. And those disclosures will accelerate the collapse of the old order, which I've talked about for well over a year now, as Pluto continues to grind through those last few degrees of Capricorn. It will take until 23, 24 to complete that, but it's excavating anything that is not for our highest good, that is not in integrity, particularly within established structures that we've had for many, many years. So that's the backdrop. Now, the dominant aspect through 2021 is this square between Saturn in Aquarius and Uranus in Taurus. Now, I've developed a separate video that I filmed a month or so back called Thoughts About 2021, and in that video I actually talked about the major themes of this square. So rather than repeating everything I said there, I'll just put the link for that video below and you can go back and take a look, and that can kind of act as a backdrop for any, as I say, any update I do. But essentially this square between Saturn and Uranus happens 3 times exactly in 2021. Happens for the first time on the 17th of February, then again on the 14th of June, and then finally on the 24th of December. So just very broadly, the obvious themes here are about control, Saturn, versus freedom, Uranus. It's about the establishment, Saturn, versus innovation, Uranus. Now, there are many other themes that, as I say, I covered in that last video. But essentially, in these fights between Saturn and Uranus, Uranus will always win because it's the further out planet. It's about a big theme for this year is the power of the people. One very good example of that, which many of you will be familiar with, was when a group of, I believe they were millennials, they were young people, they weren't at all wealthy, they agreed to get together on this online forum called Reddit to challenge the Wall Street hedge fund and play them at their own game. And they did extremely well with a company called GameStop. You can look all this up online. It's too much to explain here. But essentially, as I understand it, trading was actually stopped because there was wild volatility in the stock market at that time as a result of this. And in fact, hard aspects between Saturn and Uranus are very linked historically to big swings in stock markets and economies. So this was the power of the people, successfully David coming up against Goliath and doing very well indeed. And this idea of the power of the people is actually something that Lynn McTaggart, the author and speaker, has talked about for many, many years in her work. And she gives an enormous amount of evidence of the power of the people, how people coming together in a group, even though they're scattered across the world, they come together energetically to meditate, the power they can have to even reduce rates of violence in the Middle East over a set period of time when it's all carefully measured. I mean, she did this very scientifically. So if you particularly look at her books, The Intention Experiment and The Power of 8, it will really give some evidence to how we can work energetically together. So big theme of Aquarius energy is the power of the people. Now, another aspect of this Saturn-Uranus square, which I didn't mention in the video Thoughts About 2021, is that Saturn in Aquarius is really to do with your mental constructs. Mental, Aquarius, ruled by Uranus, Saturn, constructs. So this is really the way we see our world, we see our reality, what we've grown up with as comprising our day-to-day life. But the square from Uranus means that Uranus comes in like a thunderbolt, just like a bolt of lightning, and just smashes that. It's not kind, it's not gentle, it's not linear, it's not gradual, it's raw, it's radical, it's fast, it's sudden, it's no more. And Uranus is really, really linked to truth. It's the pure, piercing sword of truth and clarity. So it shines light in the darkness. It shines a light where there's non-truth, untruth. So this plays into what I was talking about a moment ago of revelation and disclosure. So the way we have viewed our world, I think, is going to shift radically through this year. And apparently I wrote in my first book that when we got to the end of 2020, I'd forgotten I'd written this actually, but when we got to the end of 2020, life would be very, very different from at the beginning of that year. Equally, I think that's true for 2021. By the time we get to the end of 2021, it will be very different again, because we are going through a huge amount of the collapse of the old order, the demolition of the old order, partly through this very strong Aquarian Uranus energy of truth. Will not tolerate any non-truth or lack of integrity. So it's going to be very interesting. So yes, we're going to be living on a demolition site. Yes, we absolutely are. It's not comfortable, it's not easy, but there's purpose to it, because in that collapse, we're getting closer to a whole new Earth. And I've talked many times in my videos about this very high frequency gamma ray neutrino light coming onto the Earth, which we haven't had in many thousands of years, that's upgrading every cell in our body, activating or even reactivating our DNA. And by the laws of physics, if you've got very high frequency energy coming in, low frequency energy cannot coexist in that same space. It cannot, it crumbles, it just goes to dust. And so, simply by the laws of physics, without any human intervention, this is what's going to happen. It's known as downward causation, because the high frequency light is more powerful than the low frequency light. So this is going to be a roller coaster of a year, quite a wild ride, but that is our direction of travel. That's our trajectory. So also we have Jupiter in Aquarius. Jupiter is going to stay in Aquarius most of this year, although it's going to have a short dart out into Pisces between the 14th of May and the 29th of July. But for the rest of this year, it's going to be in Aquarius. Now, Aquarius is linked to science. Jupiter enlarges, expands any planet or sign it touches. So largely it is going to be expanding the science and the innovation this year, and with enthusiasm. Jupiter is hugely enthusiastic, and it's moving very, very quickly through Aquarius at the moment. As I say, it'll enter Pisces by the 14th of May, just incredible. Aquarius is air is also fast energy. So very fast developments in science and innovation. What's interesting, however, is that on the 20th of June, Jupiter then moves retrograde at 2 degrees of Pisces and starts to backtrack over what progress it has made since the earlier months of this year. So that's going to be very interesting, because any retrograde goes back over what that planetary principle was about, which was about the expansion of science. I think that's really interesting. What is also really the same theme as this is that Saturn stays steadily in Aquarius, moving much more slowly than Jupiter, stays in Aquarius all the way through till March 2023. So another 2 years. Saturn is the reality check, the consequences of what Jupiter has rushed through. So I think that is a super, super way of, interesting way of looking at this too. Inevitably, through all this Aquarian energy, we are going to have a lot of innovation, much of which can be incredibly beneficial. It really comes down, actually, there's so many, these themes are repeated over and over again in the astrology, because if you simply look at the symbolism of Uranus in Taurus, and by the way, I've got a whole video on Uranus in Taurus that I made, a couple of years ago, these are not easy bedfellows, because Uranus is about science, innovation, all kinds of new developments, engineering, that kind of thing, and it's sitting in Taurus until 2026. Taurus is our human bodies, and it's also agriculture, it's our food supplies. So there will be an urge in part to kind of industrialize and engineer agriculture and our food supplies. That's going to be one particular movement. Also going to have new science that is going to be relevant to the body in lots of different ways. So there could even be kind of cutouts in our food supply, because Uranus is a very kind of cutting out sort of energy, so there could be disruptions at times. But this to me is very interesting, because Taurus is so different from Uranus. Uranus is fast. Taurus wants to go really slowly, wants to do things in a simple, natural, traditional way. Did your grandfather have a farm and he used horses to pull the plough? It's that kind of tuning into the simple rhythms of the earth. Biodynamic farming, planting by the phases of the moon, that's very linked to Taurus. So it's those natural, simple rhythms of the earth, keeping things as they are. Whereas the pull from Uranus is to revolutionize, make modern, engineer, industrialize. So it's going to be very interesting. So Taurus to me represents the organic of our bodies and the organic of the earth. The shadow side of Uranus can be the inorganic, obviously, because it's going to be, a lot of it could be man-made. Now, that isn't always true, but I think a theme of organic versus inorganic is quite helpful to think about here, because it links with the full moon in Virgo. So one of the very positive sides of the way Uranus, I believe, is affecting our bodies is Uranus is the planet of electricity. And we know that because of this amazing photonic light pouring into our earth, that our bodies, every cell in our body, our DNA, all being upgraded and electrically repatterned. Every cell in our body is being electrically repatterned. And many of us can feel this. Uranus is a very kind of wired energy. So many of us can feel wired, exhausted, but wired. It's hard to sleep. We can feel very kind of frazzled and buzzy, that kind of a feeling. That is all evidence, actually, of this new evidence physically upgrading us. The Aquarian energy is very, very strong for the coming years. Jupiter stays in Aquarius most of this year. As I've just mentioned, Saturn stays in Aquarius all the way through till March 2023, so another 2 years. That's the year that Pluto moves in, starts to move into Aquarius until 2044. Long time. So we are going to have a lot of this very high-pitched mental energy. Now, that can be wonderful for developing new abilities. As I've talked about, we're going to be kind of connecting to potentially galactic beings or the mind of God or our superconscious in easier ways. It can be very, very positive in that respect, but it's got to be anchored in the heart, I believe, because truly I feel that we make much wiser decisions from our heart than we do from our head. There's going to be a lot of mental energy in these coming decades. So always remember to drop into your heart, and that simple act of just taking a couple of minutes out through your day, drop into the breath as if you're breathing in and out through your heart, as if it was a lung. That instantly slows and deepens your breathing, and it's a really beautiful thing to do to just kind of check you, to allow you to make better decisions. So, getting closer to the full moon, on the 24th of the month, we have the moon squaring Uranus and opposing Saturn. Now, on the 17th of the month, we had the moon conjunct Uranus and squaring Saturn. So it's very similar here. The moon in astrology is connected to the people in a mundane sense. So the people could be shocked, surprised, or feeling rebellious, taking to the streets, particularly taking to the streets and protesting, because on this same day, the 24th, the sun is semi-square Eris, and Eris is in a long-term square to Pluto until October this year. So Eris is the street activist, really stirring it up to challenge the old order. Through the last week of February, but exact on the 25th, we have a very positive trine between Mars and Pluto. Now, after 8 months of Mars squaring the Capricorn planets and the Aquarian planets, finally we have a trine from Mars. Now, this is terrific, personally, if you want to set a goal and be absolutely laser beamed focused in achieving that goal. It's really determined, tremendous willpower. It can be brute force sometimes out in the world, but at least it is a trine, not a square. So very good personally, as I say, so use that well. Then on the 27th, we have the full moon at 8 degrees 57 minutes of Virgo, so almost 9 degrees of Virgo. This happens at 12:17 a.m. Pacific and 8:17 p.m. UK time. Feelings will be building up to this full moon. They always do at a full moon, and it can shine a light on things that we weren't aware of before. So what are those feelings likely to be about? Where is it likely to shine its light? Well, one of the big themes of Virgo is health. So not hard to see how we could be thinking about that. Health, hygiene, microbes, all that sort of thing. But Virgo energy, to me, is very connected to the ancient wisdom of the earth, the ancient wisdom keepers, who knew that the earth had everything we need to heal us, be it plant medicine, herb medicine, essential oils, homeopathy, that kind of thing. So we're back to the organic here. So that is one of the big themes here. Another theme of Virgo is discernment and discrimination. We have this North Node in Gemini all year. That is about our choices. So again, we're being asked to be very fine in our perception, in our discernment of the choices we make. And again, drop into the heart before you make those choices. So another theme of Virgo is it can be the critic. People who have strong Virgo energy tend to be a bit perfectionist sometimes and their own worst critic, their own worst enemy, because it can be a little bit fretty, a little bit anxious at times. It's ruled by Mercury. It's a very, again, quite a high-pitched mental energy too. So it's also to do with your daily thinking habits. So try and catch those unconscious patterns of, I'm not young enough, good enough, rich enough, da-da-da-da. Try and catch them by sticking post-it notes around your house. What are you thinking about? Catch your thinking. So you can start to develop a more positive mental habit where you're focused on very positive thinking and not catch yourself from that negative run of thinking. I think the other important thing to say about this very strong Aquarian energy that we have for many years to come is, I talked last time when we had 6 planets in Aquarius. We haven't had that since February 62, and I mentioned in the last video how that was really the beginning of the hippie movement that lasted most of that decade. Now, what's interesting here is the hippie movement was a new social concept. A new social concept that was birthed out of the power of the people, sharing, community, love. A lot of protest involved in that, both in the music and on the street, protesting against the mainstream narrative. All of those themes, and spiritual awakening, it was a big spiritual awakening in the 60s. All of those themes are here again now with this Aquarian energy. The idea of a new social concept that we, the power of the people, create. And remember, what they didn't have in the 60s was this incredible new photonic energy pouring onto our Earth. So that really helps us here. Now, we here at the full moon, we don't have 6 planets in Aquarius, we only have 3, but nevertheless, it's strong energy. We have Mercury at the midpoint of Jupiter and Saturn. So Mercury is the kind of messenger, if you like, with one ear on Saturn, one ear on Jupiter. One is optimism, Jupiter, but also hearing Saturn, pessimism. Jupiter's wanting to rush forward, expand with enthusiasm. Saturn saying, no, pull back, got to be cautious, take our time. So you may see those swings in the outer world and society, or you may feel it within yourself day to day. But Mercury, because it went direct, or it's going direct on the 21st of February, will be catching up now with Jupiter, moving towards Jupiter. And this is very positive. That conjunction will become exact on the 4th and 5th of March, but this is about big ideas, big visionary ideas for the future, how we can make things better. That's part of this too. Another beautiful thing at this full moon is a shift of the Sun and Venus into Pisces. So that's easing this Aquarian energy that's so mental. And Pisces is a very different energy. It's yin, soft, feminine, receptive. Venus is very happy in Pisces. This is beautiful creative energy. But Venus is also conjunct a fixed royal star of Persia called Fomalhaut, Fomalhaut. Fomalhaut is the spiritual teacher, linked to Archangel Gabriel. It's very magical, mystical, spiritual. So this is beautiful. This brings in a kind of connection to source, a connection to the divine. So this encourages you to drop into altered states, whether you're in nature or listening to music or meditating or whatever. It's that shift where you feel you're connecting to source. And I think with all of this outward chaos and busy mental energy and so much going on in the world, sometimes Pisces just wants to let go and let God. Have a feeling of surrender. It doesn't matter how you define God, just this feeling, let go and let God. And kind of linked to that, there's a very simple, beautiful practice called the I Am Presence. It's particularly good before you start your day, wake up, before you open your eyes, before you rush to your emails or whatever. Just sit for 5 minutes and drop below your name, drop below your gender, your title, if you have one, your role in life, mother, father, daughter, son, partner. Just drop into that eternal I am stillness. It's very Chariklo, this permanent eternal state of being that is below all of those identity labels. And this is a beautiful way to start your day, can change the tone for the rest of your day. And if you can do it, just take a few minutes out through your day to do that regularly. This will really change your life. And remember that we are multi-dimensional beings of light. We are multi-dimensional beings of light. All of this new light pouring onto the earth gives us an amazing opportunity to hold more light in our bodies. And that's where we're headed, to hold more light in our bodies. The more light we can hold, the higher our level of consciousness. And it is going to be that determines our future timeline, individually and collectively. It's going to be that determines our trajectory, because although, as I've spoken, there are two broad collective timelines here, there are absolutely infinite numbers of timelines. And you self-select them depending on your frequency. And your frequency is linked to the amount of light you can hold in your body. So the more you can feel yourself as a being of light moving away from density, the more you can see the world as holographic, light, or just shifting elements of light, the higher that path you will take for your future. So I hope that's helped. If you don't know where these points that I've talked about fall in your chart, you can download a free birth chart from my website. Get this, go to this video link above. You can buy a 2-part video series from my store that will help you understand what any update I ever do means for you. If you want more information about my books, my videos, my very long monthly newsletter, just check out my website, pamgregory.com. And I hope that's helped you. Have a wonderful full moon in Virgo. Bye for now.